A warm welcome to Christian Arnold Golf. Today we're going to be talking about some very basic golfing terms, perhaps for the newbie or the beginner who's just taken up the game and wants to know what some of them actually mean and hasn't had the heart or hasn't had the confidence to ask someone else. Let's start with some really basic golfing terms.
The tee, teeing off, tee box, tee markers, and the tee peg.
First up, the tee. What a great place to start because that's where you'll be starting, on the tee. The tee is the place where you hit your first shot on the first hole, and every hole for that matter. It's called a tee box, and that is often a little mound of ground which has a tee marker. These tees could be white tees, red tees, yellow tees, blue tees. Every golf course can be different. The most common is white, red and yellow. Yellow being the normal tees, white being generally the tournament tees, and the red tees are the forward tees. Now again, this changes from every golf course you might go on. The term tee is also used for the bit of wood or plastic used to keep your ball off the ground when you're teeing off. You can only use a tee from the tee box.
The hole, the fairway, the rough, the fringe, and the green.
Next up, a hole. Now this is actually more complicated than you'd think to describe. So when they refer to a course as having 18 holes, what they mean is there are 18 separate tracks of holes. So from the tee box, there could be fairway, rough, trees, bunkers and sand, water hazards, hills, ditches and trenches, a fringe and a green. And on that green is a hole. That's the hole you're aiming to get into. It has a little flag sticking out of it. But when people refer to the hole, they actually mean the track that you're playing on. For example, what did you hit on hole 3? They don't actually mean what did you hit into the hole, the cup, with the flag in it. The fairway is generally the part in the middle which has the best manicured grass, and this is where you want to aim because it means you have a much better chance of 1, finding your ball, and 2, having a good connection with your ball on your next shot. The green is the target for the entire hole. This is where the hole, the cup itself, is located. This will have a flag sticking out and it is the entire aim of the game. The green is surrounded usually with a fringe. The fringe borders the green and is usually a separator from the rough or fairway to the green itself. Strictly speaking, the fringe is not the green, but that is a bit harsh because most high handicappers putt from there anyway.
Out of bounds.
As a new or high handicap golfer, it's highly likely you're going to hit your fair share of balls out of bounds. So what does out of bounds mean? As you'd expect, it means that it's no longer in play. You can't play your ball. Usually, this is actually the border or the parameter of the golf course itself, but not always. It could be for safety reasons. For example, there could be a very steep trench, or the hole borders or goes onto another hole or course, and it would be dangerous to have it in bounds. Sadly, it means your ball is no longer in play. You have to take the penalty, drop another ball, and hit the same shot again.
Bogey, par, birdie, eagle, Albatross and Condor.
Every hole on every course has a par rating. This is almost always par 3, par 4 and par 5. I have played a par 6 when I was younger, but I believe that's very rare these days. So what does par mean? What does it mean? So for example, if you're on a par 3 and you hit 3 shots to get the ball in the hole, it's a par. You've scored par. Well done. However, if you shoot 1 less than par, it's called a birdie. That's even better. So for example, on a par 4, you've hit 3 shots. That's a birdie. If you hit 2 shots under par, that's called an eagle. For example, on a par 5, you've hit 3 shots. Or on a par 3, a hole in 1, 1 shot. There is also an albatross for when you hit 3 shots under par. This would be a hole in 1 on a par 4, or a hole in 2 on a par 5. And finally, a condor. This is when you hit 4 shots under par. I'll be honest, I didn't know this existed until I did my research today, and it would mean getting a hole in 1 on a par 5, which I suppose is possible, but highly, highly unlikely. To put it in perspective, I've played 120 rounds of golf and I've only had 1 eagle. Now for the bad. What happens if you score 1 over the par? That's called a bogey. 2 over, double bogey. 3 over, triple bogey. 4 over, quadruple bogey. And you've guessed it, 5 over, I don't know how you pronounce it. Quintuple? Quintuple? Either way, it's very bad. But fear not, the worst you can score in golf is a 12. So if you pick up the ball, it's a 12. You can never do worse than a 12. Sadly, I've had to do this once or twice myself. And by once or twice, I mean quite a few times.
Driver, woods, irons, hybrid, wedges, chipper, and putter.
So, how do you play this wonderful game of golf? With clubs. But they've all got different names, and what do they mean? It's all so confusing. So let's start with the first one. The long stick, the big hitter, the driver. The driver is the longest club and the biggest club you have in your bag. It is used for driving, so hitting off of the tee box, and pretty much only ever hit off the tee box. Unless you're a professional and you're exceptionally good at golf, there's no point taking a driver off the ground at any point during the round. Next up are the woods, which are no longer made from wood. These are very similar to the driver, but generally a bit smaller and they have a bigger angle on them so the ball can get up in the air. You can hit these off the ground or off the tee box. They give you longer distance. Next up, we have the irons. These are the most common club people have in their bag. These will range from a 3-iron to a pitching wedge and anything in between. They're called irons because additionally they're made from iron. In between irons and woods you have hybrids, also known as rescue clubs. So these are called hybrids because they're in between what you'd see as a wood and what you'd see as an iron. A lot of high handicappers absolutely love these clubs because they tend to be easier to hit. Then you have your wedges. Now these tend to be clubs that you use when you're in close proximity to a hole and need to get height or spin or use it out of a bunker. There are various different types of wedges: sand wedge, gap wedge, pitching wedge, utility wedge, and they're various different degrees and different angles. They look very similar to irons, they tend to be shorter, and the angle of the club is far more open. You also have chippers. These are in between a wedge and a putter. Lots of true golfers think chippers are a waste of time. Lots of high handicappers think chippers are fantastic and really helps them improve their score. Some even call it cheating. And lastly, and most importantly, the putter. Arguably the most important club in your bag. This is a club which has a flat face and it is used only or primarily from the green or surrounding areas. It doesn't get the ball up in the air, it rolls the ball across the ground. The putter is the most used club in your bag, and even on a very good day, you're likely to use it 36 times.
The toe, the heel, the shaft, the hozzle, grooves, and the grip.
So each club is made of different parts. Each club has a toe, a heel, a shaft, a grip, a face, and generally grooves.
Takeaway, backswing, downswing, impact, and finish.
When you're a new golfer, you hear lots of people use different terms for your swing. The swing is made up from different parts and different movements. The first is the setup or address. This is basically when you stand over the ball and you get everything aligned and straightened. The next step is the takeaway. Now, when I had coaching for the first time, I'd never heard this term before and I was completely confused when he kept talking about my takeaway. The takeaway part of the swing is the first movement away from the ball, and it's generally as the club rises away and gets to hip height. The next part of your swing is the backswing. The top of the swing is where the backswing stops and the downswing begins. It's the transition between the backswing and the downswing. The downswing is the bit where you swing down. The impact phase is when the club, ideally still in your hands, has hit the ball. And then finally, you have the follow through and the finish. It's important if you hit a good shot to hold the finish in case there's someone taking a photo.
A pull, a push, a slice, a hook, a draw, and a fade.
After hitting the ball, it will go in the air, hopefully, and can go dead straight down your target line. However, unfortunately, this doesn't always happen, and there are other various shot shapes. They're called a push, a pull, a slice, a hook, a draw, and a fade. As a right-handed golfer, the push is when you tend to push the ball right of your target. The pull is when you go left of the target. A slice is when the ball banana's right. A hook's when the ball banana's left. A fade is when there's a slight curvature to the right. And a draw is when there's a slight curvature to the left. Most high handicappers have a slice.
A drive, a pitch, and a chip.
Drive is when you hit the ball off a tee box. Pitch is when you hit a shorter shot towards the green. A chip is usually from around the green when you need to get the ball up in the air to land soft.
Pitch marks.
Pitch marks are made when the ball lands on the green, often from a great height, and causes a little dent. As a new golfer, you might often see signs saying please repair your pitch marks. It is important you repair your pitch marks because it can cause long-lasting damage to the greens. And that can make putting incredibly hard. Most golf courses will give you a free pitch mark repairer. It's easy. It's so easy, and yet you'll see many greens and many courses with pitch marks and damage that has been made by people not repairing them.
Divots.
Divots are made as the club goes through the impact of the ball and takes a piece of earth afterwards. Well, afterwards if you're a good golfer, like me, it's often before the ball. It's important that you replace the divot so that it can repair itself and that no one lands in the divot after you. Landing on the fairway and finding your ball in a divot is one of the saddest things in golf.
The lie.
The lie. This has nothing to do with if someone's telling the truth or not. This is referring to the lie of the ball itself. Is it on the fairway, on the nice, tightly cut grass? Is it in a bunker? Is it in the rough? Is it in the stream, half underwater? This is what the lie means.
Traps and bunkers.
Bunkers are evil little holes filled with sand to catch out golfers like myself. They can be positioned anywhere on a golf course and be a nightmare to get out of. In a bunker, because you're not allowed to touch the sand with your club until you hit the ball, you can't have any practice swings.
Dog leg.
Dog leg basically means if a hole bends left or bends right or bends left and right or right and left. Simple.
The rake. Rake it.
This literally refers to raking the bunker after you've used it. You'll hear people say this after you've been in a bunker and they're just letting you know they want you to rake the bunker. Every bunker should have a rake nearby. Similar to playing out of a divot, playing out of a foot-hole in a bunker is incredibly annoying.
In or out.
This has nothing to do with the okie-dokie, and in fact this is just asking if you want the flag in or out when you're putting. The rules have changed about having the pin in or out when putting, and now you can do either. So when someone's saying in or out, they're just asking you if you want it in or out. It's your choice. If you're a high handicapper, I would always suggest keeping the pin in. Statistically, it is meant to give you an ever so slight advantage.
The 19th hole.
When I was young and innocent to the world of golf, I genuinely believed that the 19th hole was a separate, extra hole. I later found out it was in fact the bar. The 19th hole is the bar in the clubhouse.
4.
Last, and by no means least, is 4. 4! People in my street genuinely just heard me shout 4 and they're very confused. 4 is possibly the most important thing for all beginner golfers to learn. It is imperative that when you hit the ball, offline, or where you can see another golfer or into danger, shout 4. It's easy. Shout 4. Shout it loud, shout it proud, shout 4. The amount of times I've seen golfers nearly hit with a golf ball and no one has shouted 4 is ridiculous. As a new golfer, I understand you might not be very confident, but it's much better to be safe than sorry. Always shout 4. I understand that the original term was the ball is before you, but they discovered that took too long to shout. And by that time, the person was already in peril. So they shortened it to 4. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I will be releasing weekly content aimed for the mid to high handicap golfer. For example, on a par 5, you've hit 3 shots, that's 6. Bogey, par, birdie, eagle, albatross, condor. And finally, a condor. This is when you hit 4 shots. 4 shots? There's a guy outside grinding a huge lump of metal while I'm trying to record.